The Heavenly Demon. Can't Live a Normal Life. By Sanchin. Chapter 273. Second Coming of Heavenly Demon. Part 5. Roman Dmitri called both names. Chris, Kevin. From now on. Why were they called? The people were quite shocked by it. As it was just an extension of what was said, Chris and Kevin weren't the right people. Even so, the two moved without hesitation. From now on, I want to present you as the great warriors of Dmitri. If you don't have the confidence to win, I will give you a chance to step down. Thank you for giving me the chance to represent Dmitri. I will definitely win. They were just a few words, and Roman Dmitri looked at Duke Bamford after saying those words, wondering what his response would be. Duke Bamford's expression was cold. When his anger had gone past the human limit, he gulped down the boiling emotions inside of him. Roman Dmitri's suggestion of a battle of great warriors was understandable. If it was the monster who defeated Barbassa, he must be wanting to reverse the situation by using the variable called the Battle of Great Warriors against the Kronos Empire. But Chris and Kevin were different beings. While researching Roman Dmitri, he also finished figuring out the people related to Dmitri. The development of the two was leaps and bounds. From the time that was presumed to be their first meeting, they made tremendous progress, to the point of doubting if they were the same person, but they weren't strong enough to be considered by the standards of the continent. And that meant his existence wasn't enough to put him in the position of handling the Kronos Empire. Just the fact that the bright young men came out as great warriors was enough to hurt the pride of the Kronos Empire. Their stomachs boiled. He didn't intend to follow Roman Dmitri's intentions. However, if he steps down now, people will express their thoughts about this war. Why? Did Duke Bamford, with great swordsmen under his command, have to refuse the battle of great warriors against Chris and Kevin? This was a great chance to win. Taking a step against the two beings, who weren't even Roman Dmitri or ranked warriors, wasn't something Kronos could tolerate and ignore. Duke Bamford said in a bloody voice. Roman Dmitri. Do you know why Kronos is an empire? It isn't simply because it is a land ruled by the emperor. There are enough talented people who can handle the large lands, and beings praised as great and kingdoms are common talents in this land, and that is why it is called an empire. Hannibal? He didn't even have to step out. There were many stronger people besides him in this war. In a situation where we refuse to fight with you as a great warrior, you must have made a foolish proposal, thinking that Hannibal wouldn't step up first. Right, we won't accept this. Even if Hannibal didn't step out. 10 years? No. I will show you that you aren't even close to the level of the toes of the Kronos Empire if you try to fight with people whose names weren't even known 5 years ago. Shoo. Roman Dmitri smiled. And he signaled to Chris with a wink, and Chris stepped ahead calmly. And looking at him, Duke Bamford cried out. Diego! Go and get me the head of that guy. The one who was named 6th in Kronos' ranking was Diego. He was a member of the 12 Swords of the Continent and was ranked 12th. It was a very embarrassing thing for him. Like Barbassa, he was a person who was evaluated as the bottom of the 12 Swords of the Continent, but he was still a 6-star swordsman, which normal people couldn't even handle. As Duke Bamford said, the Kronos Empire had many talents. Even if Hannibal didn't come out, there were other 6-star aura swordsmen who could replace him. I am Diego. He stepped forward. Glancing at the other person, he let out a sigh as if annoyed. Then he heard it through Hannibal. He met Chris on the battlefield, but he was told that he abandoned his colleague, Count Nicholas, to live. That was Chris's reality. If he had developed that much at a young age, the future potential was truly amazing, but the problem was that he wasn't strong enough to go against a 6-star aura swordsman. And Diego said, They say that the men of Dmitri are loyal, and looking at you, I know it's true. You are the one who is going against Kronos. I don't know how long Roman Dmitri will remember your loyalty, but the continent will write it down in history that you were one reckless man. You want to fight with your mouth? Chris's reaction made Diego laugh. When he was given the order, Chris had no intention of giving him a decent death. "Right, let's see how long you will keep that mouth going." No signal was needed. It was an immediate concern. As they faced each other, ready to fight, Diego exploded his aura and rushed forward. At that moment, pat. Blood splashed at the corner of his eye. It was just a minor difference. Feeling the mana explode from Chris, he instinctively turned his head and felt this burning pain. Goosebumps rose up all over his body. The opponent was just a kid who hadn't even reached 5 stars, but the attack he made was so swift that he couldn't react to it. But he didn't doubt his victory. The opponent's attack must have given everything in his attack, and if this didn't work, the battle was already over. Rather. Rumble. Even the slightest laid-back attitude vanished from his mind. Rumble. Rumble-ee. A 6-star aura exploded. With the power that seemed to devour the world, Chris made sure that all his senses were alive and observed the opponent's attack. He was fast and strong. It was possible for him to manifest a 4-star aura through his development in the past, and he would survive if he fought head-on with this man. However, Roman Dimitri taught Kevin and told him that aura wasn't absolute. These aura explosions were just temporary. People defined power as destructive when it reached 6 stars, but the situation changed even if the person was a little bit off. Tat. Tot. He stepped up at the right time to fight the enemy. Just taking a few steps back slowed the timing a little, and he momentarily found the location where the aura wasn't perfectly disturbed. The aura surrounding the sword wasn't constant. If the part that violently displayed 150% of a 6-star aura came up, the part that didn't have half the aura would come up too. There was a subtle difference. They were changes that a normal swordsman wouldn't recognize, but Chris was able to easily find them from his training with Roman. Quang. Rumble. He encountered the aura. The tremendous shock pushed Chris away, but that alone shocked Diego since he blocked his attack with just a 4-star aura. It was incomprehensible with the common sense the world ran on, and that was why he pushed ahead, denying reality. Quang. Quack quack wang. It was a fierce clash. The exploding aura didn't allow any gaps. But the more he attacked, the redder Diego's face became. Chris should have collapsed a lot sooner, but the fact that he was still holding on was what made Diego angry. His victory in this battle was to be expected. People were more interested in how overwhelmingly he would defeat the man than the result, so his expression, which hardened with each running minute, showed their disappointment. The problem was that he couldn't make any decisions now. Even after being pushed back one-sidedly, Chris's surprise counterattack turned his nerves cold. Flash. It was swift. In the link between the attacks, Chris caught a slight gap. The last few days have been tough. Along with the growth of his body, his mind also expanded in noticing things. In the past, he didn't understand Roman Dimitri's actions and words. In a situation where they would be overwhelmingly defeated if they didn't use aura, they just thought that they were no match against Roman. But things were different now. Aura was just an extension of the sword. The truth commonly used on the continent said that the power of aura was what determined victory or defeat, but Roman always concentrated on sword technique. Just like how he taught the flash attack. Rather than simply overwhelming the opponent with aura, the method of understanding the sword technique and destroying the opponent was conveyed through sparring. In the fight with Hannibal, he was mentally defeated. He thought he could never win against that destructive power. If only Roman Dimitri had been there. Even if he could just manifest a 4-star aura, would he have accepted his defeat against Hannibal? No. It was clear that Roman Dimitri would have turned the situation around with his sword technique. At the time he caused trouble in Dmyri, Roman Dimitri defeated the opponents who were always judged impossible to win. And Chris wanted to follow such a path. Rather than conforming to common sense, he wanted to overcome the limitations like Roman did. Weak. Rumble. Aura split the space. Even though it happened right in front of his nose, Chris looked at the opponent until the end and attacked in the right gap. Flash. Swish. The opponent's face was stained with shock. For the first time, he retrieved his sword, choosing to defend rather than attack. Suddenly, Roman Dimitri's voice came to his mind. When he finally joined him, Roman Dimitri noticed a change in Chris and said, "Chris, at one time, people called you the greatest talent in Dimitri. But now that you have created something new for yourself, the people's evaluation turned out to be wrong." From the moment they first met, Roman recognized Chris's talent. On the Salamander continent, no talent will surpass you. Roman's words and what he felt were different. Roman Dimitri himself wouldn't have been included in that range, but he said that Chris was the best talent on the continent, even when dealing with monsters like Barbassa. This was why he pushed Chris to enter the battle of great warriors against the Kronos Empire. Roman Dimitri's confidence gave him boundless trust. Quang. Rumble. The attack was blocked, and Chris waited for the right moment in the confusing fight. The aura was boiling over. The aura that had finished warming up was now running wild, but Chris wouldn't allow it to move out of his dantian just yet. He pressed it down hard. This flash of compression caused an instantaneous eruption. Based on both, Chris reconstructed the path from his dantian to the sword, creating this thin, steel-hard passage. And the result was body reformation. He took a deep breath. The moment Diego lost his composure and ran. Flash. Rumble. Aura exploded. The aura from his dantian reached his sword in just 0.1 second, showing a speed that no human could understand. Blink. It was speed beyond the limit. And Diego widened his eyes at the burning pain. He couldn't see or react. The moment he thought he was going to try something, there was a flash of light, and Diego felt a burning pain. Ahem. Blood splashed. His chest was cut. Diego panicked and retrieved his sword to try and block the attacks further, but Chris didn't miss the chance and continued to attack. He cut the leg of the opponent who was trying to block him, throwing him off balance, and when he raised his sword with a distorted expression from pain, he was kicked in the chest and rolled back. Quack. He wasn't careless. He did his best, and he decided not to allow a single counterattack because he thought he would punish Chris. But he was too fast. His flash-like movement and the cut through the space was like a swift sword that had reached its limit, and in the world Diego had lived in, no one had ever used such a sword technique. He couldn't stand still. The battle of great warriors had already begun, and the excuse that Chris was terrifying more than he thought wouldn't work for the Kronos Emperor. In this fight, they had to take each other's lives. Diego got up, but what awaited him was Chris's attack. He only lost the flow once. Diego was surely a strong man, and even if Chris was the opponent, he was a monster who couldn't guarantee 100 wins every time. However, the opponent didn't know the skills Chris had, and that defeated him. The existence of Chris, who pioneered this new path, became strong enough to change the irreversible situation. Slash. His arm flew. Kneeling, Diego tried to counter with his other arm. He couldn't surrender, so he had to die. It was the only way to save his family, and Diego slumped his face to the floor, removing his other arm. That was the end. He wielded his sword like that, and people would take it as Chris's victory. At that time, Chris looked at Hannibal among the shocked people. And crack. As if to show off to everyone, death was presented to end the battle. Chapter 274. Second Coming of Heavenly Demon. Part 6. People groaned. The blood that was spilled all over the floor shocked Duke Bamford. Did Diego just lose to a 4-star swordsman? It was shocking. Having experienced numerous wars as a commander to the point of being called a veteran, he possessed extensive knowledge of sword techniques. So he accepted Roman Dimitri's challenge. Even if he prepared a special plan that no one would expect, it didn't make sense for Diego, a member of the 12 Swords of the continent, to lose against Chris. The 12 Swords. Among the numerous aura tests, they were monsters that had risen to the peak. He had a 6-star aura that was normal among them, and it could even destroy Chris's existence. but he was defeated. He couldn't even properly check how Chris's attack was attempted, and in a situation where he was looking at it with eyes wide open, blood suddenly splashed from Diego's chest. In the first place, it was an embarrassing moment for a 6-star aura swordsman to fight against a 4-star aura swordsman. Watching Diego stumble and collapse, his face slumped to the ground and bled, and Duke Bamford watched this in silence. Blood flowed. The blood that flowed in the hollow ground was Diego's, who died in vain. Whoa! Chris! 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 In Cairo, the soldiers of the Dimitri Alliance cheered. They also thought from the moment Diego's name was mentioned that it would be difficult for Chris to win, but his performance was so overwhelming that they witnessed an unexpected result. They didn't analyze this fight with common sense. Even if an unexpected blow had decided the match, the fact that Chris had won was the most important thing. The first fight was a victory for Dimitri. Looking at Chris step back while wiping off the blood on his sword, Kevin stepped ahead as if he had been waiting. Damn it. Duke Bamford's expression changed. There were only 2 6-star aura swordsmen in this plan. Some of them were mobilized for other purposes, and when Diego was defeated, he wanted to put Hannibal down. Even though Hannibal was also a 6-star aura swordsman, he was on a different level. In that case, it wouldn't be a problem for Kevin, who was known as just a 3-star swordsman, to be defeated. However, the problem was that they had already gone through this. Repeating their words was something that didn't match Kronos' status. Then Duke Bamford gulped down his anger and called out a name. Blanco. Yes. It was a man in his early 40s. A man with a huge body and impressive face stepped out at Duke Bamford's call. The opponent is just a 3-star swordsman. I warn you in advance that the moment you lose against that guy, your entire family will be annihilated. Do you know what that means? Defeat is an unacceptable fight. However, if you return with the name of the Kronos Empire high in the sky, I will make sure to reward you for it. I understand. He nodded his head. He looked slightly nervous, but since Blanco was strong, he was confident. The opponent in front looked so weak that he doubted how this person could be chosen as a great warrior. He stepped forward. I am Blanco. Giving their name was basic manner. However, there was no answer. Kevin mumbled something as he stood, and his voice was so small that no one could even hear it. And this made Blanco's expression distort. He was the most powerful being outside the top 6-star swordsmen and reached 7th place in Kronos' ranking. In a situation where even hearing his name would make a person shudder, Kevin's appearance, who didn't acknowledge him, ignited his anger. There is no need for words. Chuck. He held the sword. No questions or answers were needed. Rather, it was what Blanco, who was desperate for victory, wanted. Tack. Rumble. He kicked the ground. This raging aura occurred, and the distance with his opponent was shortened in an instant, and Blanco raised his aura to 5 stars nonchalantly. But Kevin still didn't move. The moment Blanco swung his sword right in front of his nose, his red eyes caught Blanco's movements. Quang. Rumble. There was this terrifying crash. Kevin attacked the most vulnerable part of his 5-star aura, and, at the same time, twisted his sword slightly to dig into his opponent's arms. It was quite frustrating. It annoyed him how he had to block a mere 3-star aura, but he was hitting and rushing in as if he didn't care about his wounds. How dare you? Rumble. His sword flashed. He quickly retrieved his sword and attacked Kevin, and in an instant, several battles were exchanged. There is a gap. Kevin's chest was wide open. Without missing a beat, Blanco immediately stretched out his sword, but he witnessed a shocking scene. Kevin was also attempting an attack. At this rate, it was clear that he was aiming for the left, but he would actually attack to the right. However, the trouble was short-lived. He was sure that he was faster than Kevin, but he couldn't make a reckless choice when he saw his eyes drenched in madness. Pat. And he dodged the attack. As expected, Kevin didn't back down. Blanco counterattacked and slashed Kevin's arm. Slash. He tasted something in his mouth. It was clearly blood, but Kevin's expression didn't distort in pain, nor did he even step back. It was a sight they couldn't even understand. As if it was his chance to attack, when Blanco was pulling back his sword, Kevin rushed in. Pat. He wanted to cut his head off. But Kevin slightly dodged and aimed for his chest instead. Pat. Blanco stepped back and also aimed for his chest while exploding his aura. The aura stirred up this fierce impulse. In a situation where his aura's unique, strong force wasn't felt, Blanco knew that the opponent blocked his attack in a way he didn't know. Flash. He turned his head. It was a surprise attack from Kevin. It was admirable how Kevin decided to block his attack and boldly rush at him from such a close distance. A 3-star aura went against a 5-star one. He was bold and didn't back down at all. He could see why people were afraid of the 3-star swordsman, who was called Dimitri's ghost. But, as expected, he isn't my opponent. He was feeling it little by little. Every time they crashed violently, the opponent's strength decreased. Even though he was somehow blocking the attacks, the difference in their destructive power was slowing down. He clearly had the advantage in this fight. Blanco wasn't in a hurry, but he decided to take down Kevin, who didn't acknowledge his existence, little by little. It was best not to overdo it with such a madman. No matter how he would win, if he lost one of his body parts, he would live a life as a crippled man, and his life as a swordsman would come to an end. This time too. The sword passed, and the attack missed. Just as he was about to strike back, this urgent voice came from behind. "Get yourself together, Blanco. You are being cornered." It was Duke Bamford. At that moment, his heart sank. In the breathless situation, Blanco didn't have a proper grasp of his situation. 1 step. 2 steps. And he took 3 steps back to counter the opponent's attack. What is this? Suddenly, the soldiers were right behind him, in a corner. He entered the realm of encroachment, and his head was spinning. Even as he descended into madness, Kevin expressed his dissatisfaction with the situation. "I was hoping for a 6-star or a swordsman. I was hoping for a 6-star or a swordsman like that time, not you." At those words, Blanco was shocked. He couldn't understand the way Kevin drove himself to a corner and spoke as if he were just talking to himself. In the last few days, Roman Dimitri's teachings have led Kevin to a new world. At the moment when the process of realizing the essence of aura was shocking, the existence of the heavenly demon sword technique, which Roman taught him, was shocking. That's how they learned the first half of the sword. He explained that the heavenly demon divine arts was an area he couldn't master after learning the ghost demon arts, and that even if he only used the first half of it, his body would be limited. On that day, he held this mighty strength in his hand. In a situation that was different from before, he wanted to test his strength against the 6-star aura swordsman. But Blanco stepped out, which only made Kevin angry. Kevin, who pushed the opponent deliberately into the corner, said with eyes drunk in madness, "I will attack you 3 times now. If you block all of them, I will admit defeat and surrender my head." The opponent was cornered, so he had to do his very best. Blanco was furious. Kevin's remarks seemed to suggest that he was 1 step ahead of him. "You cheeky." It was then. First half of the heavenly demon sword technique. Rumbly. Aura exploded. Blanco also hurriedly raised his aura and resisted the attack, which was done in a situation where it was impossible to retreat. Quang. Quack quack wang. A great shock occurred. The soldiers, who were watching the situation, fell to the ground, and Blanco was shocked as the mana vanished at once. His eyes were trembling. According to public information, he was a 3-star aura swordsman. It made no sense for Kevin to be able to use such a shocking attack. First form of the heavenly demon sword. Rumbly. The next attack was Kevin's second chance. Due to the unusual energy, Blanco gritted his teeth and raised his power. He believed in himself. In this fight against strength, it was impossible for him to be defeated by a swordsman who just had a 3-star aura. But... crack. Aura shattered. Cracks appeared in his 5-star aura, and the aura that was shattering in places spread everywhere. Crack. And that was Blanco's last memory. It was still just Kevin's second attack, but the attack tore his aura at once, and cut down his body. Quack. Quack. Blood splashed. He staggered with an unfocused look as he fell to his knees. 3 attacks. And it was just the second of him. Kevin was in a situation where he couldn't check his strength, and he looked down at Blanco with cold eyes. I told you. I was hoping for a 6-star swordsman. Flash. His neck was cut, and his head flew into the sky. And beyond that, he could see Duke Bamford's face stained with shock. They were forced to understand Diego's defeat. Chris's sword technique, which they had already witnessed, showed enough strength to ignore the level of aura. But it was hard to accept Blanco's defeat. Even though Kevin only had a 3-star aura, it was so devastating that he overpowered a 5-star aura in a simple fight. And for Duke Bamford, it felt like the world of common sense had collapsed. Regardless of the reason, the situation that happened in front of his eyes was something that couldn't happen in reality. Kevin's condition wasn't looking good. And the attack just now seemed to have an effect on him, but that didn't change the way he attacked. The spar was done, and victory was on Dimitri's side. This was such a humiliating situation, and Duke Bamford shuddered at it. Roman Dimitri. I don't know what kind of trick he did, but the outcome of the Battle of Great Warriors doesn't determine the outcome of the war. He denied this reality. In a situation where they were screaming in anger, Roman smiled. For him, this was confirmation. Roman Dimitri was hoping for an all-out war right from the start. Everyone on the continent, including the Kronos Empire and the Kingdom's Alliance, denied the reality, saying that wasn't the case, but this insane guy had no intention of avoiding a head-on fight with Kronos. It was something he wanted. The fact that there were people in the world who had similar thoughts, and that the situation had changed due to the result of the Battle of Great Warriors. Roman Dimitri was real. The moment the situation went as he intended, it occurred to him that even a 300,000 army could be defeated. Never think that anything is impossible. Duke Bamford bet on the odds. Troops, listen. Even though we lost the Battle of Great Warriors, this is nothing more than Roman Dimitri's trick to win. We have enough strength to overwhelm them. The existence of 300,000 troops with an 8th circle mage doesn't give them even a 1% chance to win. Believe in yourself and trust the Empire. If you risk your life for the Empire, you will come out as winners. He shouted. Normally, they would have taken a break after a Battle of Great Warriors, but he couldn't miss even a moment's opportunity after being defeated like that. Troops, attack! Attack! The order fell. To the words that fell like lightning, the soldiers of the Kronos Empire rushed at once. A single speech changed the atmosphere, and in that raging air, they all looked confident. Kronos! The invincible army! They all rushed in. And in response to this sudden attack, the soldiers of the Kingdom's Alliance raised their weapons. It was at that moment, beyond the people and Kevin, Roman walked ahead. And seeing Kevin trying to follow him, Roman said, "You did well. From now on, it's my turn." This war was reckless, like people said. But living as Baek Junhyok, the heavenly demon, was never easy. Shoo! He picked up his sword. The Central Plane warriors were said to be the first in heaven. If there was a sword technique that represented the heavenly demon, it would be the 9 forms. There were 9 forms that supported him. Throughout his life, Roman Dimitri never used the power to unite his thought, speed, and sword movement. And now, facing the crowd of enemies, Roman Dimitri took the first step. Heavenly Demon King's Reign step. Finally, the true heavenly demon stepped in. Chapter 275. Second Coming of Heavenly Demon. Part 7. Against the backdrop of a vast lake, sitting in a pavilion, this old man and a young man with a beard were sipping tea. 10 years have passed since the death of the heavenly demon, Baek Jung-hyuk. When I stepped into the world of Murim, it was already the heavenly demon's world, so I couldn't believe what had been passed down through generations. But the more I looked into him, the more I realized that the truth wasn't exaggerated at all. No, rather, it was lacking. The history of Murim says that the role of the followers of the heavenly demon was decisive in the process of the demonic sect unifying Murim, but the truth was different. Then, the man sipped his tea. The old man, who was listening to the other person with interest, was one of the warriors in the Justice faction who once fought against the heavenly demon. Just one person. Baek Jung-hyuk's mighty power had overwhelmed the Justice faction. Each time he appeared, the result was too much, and the day Shaolin was defeated surely came. It was a fight that had to be lost because they couldn't defeat a single being. The Justice faction, which acknowledged that fact, collapsed swiftly after they tried to preserve their strength for the sake of the future generation. It is as you said. When the 108 Arhats of Shaolin got taken down by a single man, we realized we were out of luck. Then there is something I would like to ask you. In the history of the demonic sect, Baek Jung-hyuk, the heavenly demon, is the only being who has reached the realm of heaven. In addition, he is the only one who has succeeded in unifying Murim. The martial arts of the demonic sect put the heavenly demon on top. Is the heavenly demon King's reign step the greatest in the world? He was curious. Would the heavenly demon divine arts, the best martial arts in the world, remain in history? The old man laughed. After taking a sip of his tea, he spoke vague words. We don't know. Because the heavenly demon, who reached the realm of heaven, is this godlike being no one could touch. But that is all. People who haven't witnessed his strength wouldn't know the truth. What do you mean? The time when the Justice faction was defeated. The heavenly demon was at the stage of nature. Later, using the enlightenment he got, he stepped into the next realm, but the existence of the heavenly demon we had encountered was no different from the state that the heavenly demon of past generations had achieved. Do you understand what that means? The man couldn't answer. According to the old man, conquering Murim wasn't easy. Clearly, in the history of Murim, the heavenly demon's existence was remembered as overwhelmingly strong. It was something that couldn't be explained unless it was an unprecedented achievement called the realm of heaven. The old man said, "It's a simple thing. It means that the heavenly demon Baek Jung-hyuk is a being beyond our estimations." Rumble. A cloud of dust rose. The appearance of a large 300,000 army rushing at once was a tremendous sight that overwhelmed those who witnessed it. Dmitri and Cairo's soldiers gulped at this. They prepared for war knowing this moment would come, but accepting it when it unfolded before their eyes was shocking. Their legs trembled. In the fear that crept up, they gritted their teeth and widened their eyes. In front of them, they saw Roman Dmitri walking toward the enemies. No matter how strong he was, the people seeing him were confused by his unwavering steps. Even though they had blind faith in Roman Dmitri, they thought that even Roman Dmitri had no choice but to be swept away by so many troops. This war was going wrong right from the start. With Cairo and Dmitri's power alone, it was impossible to defeat the Kronos Empire. It was at that moment. Heavenly Demon King's reign steps. One step. Roman Dmitri stepped onto the ground. 2 steps. The energy of the land rose through his legs, and it intertwined through his dantian with his arts, and it erupted with this explosive power. First form of the heavenly demon sword. Flash. He extended his sword, and he swung it even before the enemy reached him. Yet the people didn't understand what Roman was doing. It was at that moment that the massacre that shocked people began. Kwang. Energy swirled from his sword, splitting the space, and the soldiers of Kronos who were close got split. Kwang. Rumble. Dozens? No, hundreds. Innumerable enemies were torn to shreds in a single blow, and the enemies who were fiercely charging had a puzzled look. Just what did this mean? Roman Dmitri wasn't a magician who specialized in doing this. He was an aura swordsman. Even when their bodies were running to Roman, their minds couldn't accept what was in front of them. Pat. Rumble. He kicked the ground. Roman Dimitri's figure vanished, and when they found him again, he was high in the air. The sun was shining. And as he brought out his aura, the hopeless reality fell onto those below. Quang. Quack quack wang. Quack. Ack. The enemies were swept away. They were destroyed to such an extent that even their corpses weren't intact, and it showed this overwhelming destructive power to the extent that a significant number of soldiers died. The heavenly demon king's rain step was meant to accept the energy in nature and harmonize it with the heavenly demon divine arts. If he took a step, it would give him more power, 2 steps would give him twice as much power, and 3 steps would give him 3 times as much power. Tack. Another step. When Roman Ditri manifested his footwork and raised his mana, people saw an unbelievable sight. Second form of the heavenly demon sword. Flash. The space shook to the extent that it seemed like the entire space would blow up anytime. The place where the aura passed was instantly annihilated. It was completely different from what people had hoped for. The one-on-one fight was what they hoped to win, but people were dying before they even got close to Roman Dimitri. Like the heavenly demon king's rain step, there was no other form. Roman Dimitri, with the second step, moved into the midst of the enemies. Pat. Pat pat. Blood splashed. His extremely swift sword cut through the bodies of the enemies to the extent that they couldn't even confirm who had hit them. And screams came from all sides. They screamed as they attacked Roman Dimitri, but those who faced him fell immediately. In order to manifest all 9 steps, he had to reach the heavenly stage. However, Baek Jung-hyuk conquered the central plains before reaching that stage. Third step. Quang. Rumble. The ground rose, the balance of the enemy broke, and blood splashed again in the exploding aura. This was a massacre. It wasn't a common fight, this was just Roman Dimitri slaughtering people. When Duke Bamford raised his voice and ordered them to attack, it was a sight they couldn't even imagine. They didn't know how to deal with this situation, with their numbers decreasing. Shaolin, the land in Murim, wasn't even weak. The Kronos Empire had the power to dominate the continent, but like the Justice faction, it came at the wrong time. There was one out-of-the-box existence, the heavenly demon. From the moment he reached the top and accepted the flames, Dimitri had the strength to stand against the Kronos Empire. It didn't mean that Dimitri became stronger. Roman Dimitri, a single being, now displayed this overwhelming presence, unlike any of the other battles he had been rumored to have. Fourth step. Third form of the heavenly demon sword. 1 step. This was a big hit. When Roman Dimitri stretched out his sword, hundreds of soldiers vanished. Quang. Rumble. A cloud of dust rose. When he walked through the dust again, a different sight unfolded. All 300,000 troops, without being ordered, stopped and looked at Roman Dimitri with faces of fear. They felt goosebumps rise. At this moment, everyone knew that in order to kill one Roman Dimitri, many lives had to be sacrificed. It was an unbelievable situation. There were geniuses in the history of the continent who had been talked about in stories for generations, but there wasn't a single one who had accomplished such an achievement as overpowering 300,000 troops. Roman Dimitri is this historical figure now. Everything he was doing was so overwhelming compared to anyone else recorded in history. At this rate, a one-sided slaughter was bound to happen, like a wolf running toward a flock of sheep. It was then. Kronos Knights, follow me. It was Hannibal. In this unusual situation, he stepped forward with a firm look. Because he enjoyed the act of killing people, he was called the evil ghost of Kronos. The battlefield was like a playground for him, but when going against Roman right now, he couldn't even smile. The Kronos Knights who were with him were around 100. All of them displayed aura and showed a desperate will to handle Roman Dimitri. Roman Dimitri and Hannibal, alongside Kronos' knights, approached each other. When everyone was holding their breaths, Hannibal shouted and exploded his aura. Attack! Attack! Rumble! Rumbly. And they ran. Hannibal and the knights were originally brought in to deal with Roman Dmitri. But even though they witnessed an overwhelming sight, they didn't want to step back. The opponent was Kronos. Now that they were on the battlefield on the orders of their emperor, they had just one chance to win or die. 100 versus 1. They all rushed forward. At the moment of the violent clash, the situation that Kronos feared came up. Flash. Whack. Ack. Quack. Came the screams. When Roman Dmitri swung his sword, the bodies of Kronos' knights were torn apart, and in the instantaneous situation, they couldn't even see the enemy attack. When the Kronos knights aimed for his head, he avoided them and cut them down. When attacked from the sides, he raised his aura and pressed on them. The Kronos knights were shocked. They knew it was too much, but facing him was more terrifying. Whack! Blood splashed. A moment's hesitation brought them to their deaths, and Roman didn't stop moving. Swish! Rumble! Aura rushed in. Kronos knights stepped on the bodies of their comrades without hesitation, and even when Roman slashed them, they all wondered how a human could be this strong. And they died, unable to accept this reality in front of them. This insane bastard. Quang. Quack quack wang. Hannibal's aura exploded. Despite displaying an aura of tremendous power befitting his name, Roman Dmitri casually blocked Hannibal's attacks while also slaughtering Kronos knights. Hannibal's presence didn't overwhelm Roman Dmitri at all, and he watched as the knights around him were getting slaughtered. Just how? How was this even happening? Hannibal was someone who overpowered Barbossa, but Roman Dmitri showed no difficulty in playing around with Barbossa. It was an unknown truth to them. In the process of defeating Butler, Count Nicholas, and Barbossa, Roman Dmitri managed to understand more about aura. The thought that came from one question turned to determination, and he was able to defeat powerful enemies. Rumble. Aura broke down. Chris and Kevin. The reason they were able to produce results beyond common sense against the best aura swordsmen was because of what Roman had taught them. Not someone else but Roman Dmitri. In the future, he would become a great being that would redefine the history of aura swordsmen. Hannibal knew it then. Roman Dmitri hasn't killed him on purpose yet. As he was rushing in, he was only killing Kronos knights. Slash. Slash, slash, and more slashes. The massacre was accompanied by screams, and Hannibal, who was desperate at some point, realized that he was alone. It was then. Flash. Quack. Hannibal screamed, and the world collapsed. Hannibal was belatedly aware that his leg had been cut off, and he was in so much pain because of that. He couldn't believe it. Second place in Kronos' ranking and third in the continent. He was someone who shouldn't be defeated like this. The name of the being called the evil ghost of Kronos and the achievements he had made until now proved what kind of power Hannibal had. His body trembled. Suppressing the pain, Hannibal looked up at Roman Dmitri with shocked eyes. You, just what are? Hannibal. Evil ghost of Kronos. I heard the rumors about you. After the fall of the Western Front, you enjoyed it by torturing the soldiers you captured every night. The conversation between the two was heard by everyone. And Duke Bamford, who was watching this, couldn't even order an attack. Meanwhile, Roman was only looking at his opponent. He crouched and said, I don't think it's strange to act against humanity on the battlefield. The battlefield is too real to talk about such things. However, touching my people is a different thing. If someone has tortured and tormented my people, I will inflict the same or even more. This is how Roman Dmitri lives. Clench. Quack. He stepped forward and grabbed a tooth with his hand. Quack. He screamed. Hannibal was in pain and desperate to get away from Roman Dmitri. But... Stay still. Crack. He broke his arm. To keep Hannibal from rebelling, Roman Dmitri cut his legs and then broke his arms. Hannibal's fearful gaze fell on Roman Dmitri. He also enjoyed torture enough to be called the evil ghost, but he had never seen a brutal thing in the middle of the battlefield. And so Roman pulled out his teeth one after another. Whether Hannibal liked it or not, everyone had fear stained on their faces. There were hundreds of soldiers on this wide land, but no one spoke. Even the sound of breathing was so low. As if there were just two of them here, the troops from both sides just watched in silence. Chapter 276. Second Coming of Heavenly Demon. Part 8. It was an incredibly strange sight. A human writhing in agony. The presence of Roman Dmitri, the source of his pain, rendered the battlefield surreal. Ugh. The groaning wouldn't stop. Although the fight had been fierce, it now seemed like he couldn't feel anything more than a numbing pain. Hannibal, the once mighty sword of Kronos, had met his end. The onlookers stared at the scene in fear and disbelief. The tales surrounding Roman Dmitri were plentiful. Rumors circulated that he had slaughtered people when he defeated Barco, but he was merciful to those who followed him and even held parties for them. Humans are two-sided. However, such an extreme tendency made people feel odd. They could see the outside and inside of a fence now. At least those perceived as Roman's enemies didn't get to live as humans. Beast. Devil. Despite being called something similar to those, he didn't even care about it. In the first place, it wasn't a fight for the sake of humans. In the midst of a war fueled by killing intent, the demonic sect didn't care about appearing nice or considerate in the eyes of others. It was a kill or be killed situation. The world they inhabited was nothing more than a savage jungle, and it mercilessly punished those like Hannibal, who were notorious for torturing people to death. And finally, Hannibal's body went limp. Roman Dmitri stood up from his spot, running his hand through his blood-soaked hair. The war isn't over yet. So, what are you watching? Drip. Drip. Drops of blood dripped down from the ends of his hair. With eyes trembling, Duke Bamford asked, knowing that it was Hannibal's blood, who had been alive and well until now. There is a concept called kindness, even on the battlefield. Are you capable of committing such an act in front of everyone and dealing with the aftermath? In the future, your people will be captured by Kronos and endure even greater suffering. What you have done now has undeniably crossed the line. Nonsense. Roman Dmitri chuckled at the comment. Those who were defeated on the Western Front were captured and thrown into hell. Roman Dmitri wasn't accustomed to showing mercy to enemies for the sake of a peaceful death. The journey toward death is undoubtedly painful. Once you step onto the battlefield, you must accept the consequences of your choices. However, one should never lament the decision they've made. War would surely bring victory, and they would be repaid for their suffering in an unforgettable manner, even in death. Roman said. The enemies I defined are not humans. If you choose to challenge me with your sword, know that a graceful death is not an option. If you don't come to me, I will go to you. He took a single step. It was only one step, but despite just one person advancing, the soldiers of Kronos trembled, raising their weapons in fear. Roman Dmitri's words and actions instilled fear in them. No other being had taken such a step against Kronos. At that moment, Giga lightning. Flash. Quack-quack-wang. This ray of light fell upon Roman Dmitri's head. Quack-quack-wang. The entire world flashed. As the powerful surge turned everything white, Duke Bamford momentarily believed Roman would perish. However, to endure this, Roman Dmitri must not be an ordinary human. It was Sefer. He suddenly manifested a six-circle magic spell and found Roman Dmitri in the space where the Giga lightning fell. Sefer observed the intense battle between Roman and the Kronos warriors. His plan was to confirm the truth about the rumors, and he was able to confirm that this human was indeed powerful. Now, everything was clear. Roman Dmitri was undoubtedly the greatest swordsman on the continent. As of now, he had encountered numerous Aura swordsmen, but none had reached the same level as Roman Dmitri. Even the top-ranked person in Kronos wouldn't make such an appearance. He would never be able to show power like this. Pat. Roman Dmitri successfully broke through the spell. And upon witnessing this, Safar exclaimed, "I was curious about this being called Roman Dmitri at first. It was truly amazing to see this guy, who was bold enough to declare war against the Kronos Empire and win every time, unlike those who fought against Kronos without knowing their place. But now that I've seen him, I think I can understand those who were defeated by him. It wouldn't be easy to win against this monster." Rumble. An 8-circle magic shimmered. It was even questionable whether this power truly existed in reality. However, Safar was such a being. The reason Duke Bamford was confident in his victory over Dmitri was his trust in Safar, not some Aura swordsman or Hannibal. The 8th circle mage was the most powerful. Even with Roman Dmitri displaying overwhelming strength, this mage was an equally formidable monster. Rumble. Rumbly. Magic erupted. With the power to consume the world, Safar manifested its presence. "From now on, I will acknowledge Roman Dmitri's existence and give it my all. Hold on. Pat." As the circle spun, black magic surged forth. In that instant, revival. That was the forbidden magic that could be found in ancient history books. Clack. Quack. Ack. The corpses awakened. The knights of the Kronos Empire, along with the soldiers slain by Roman Dmitri, crudely lifted the bodies. They were no longer in their human forms. Thick blood was oozing from their wounds, and they had vacant, lifeless eyes. That's all they were. Revival wasn't labeled forbidden without reason. Then the beings, who were once Aura swordsmen, rushed at Safar's command and raised their auras. Rumble. Growling. A storm of aura emerged from all directions. Hannibal, with just one leg and a broken arm, was dragging himself alongside hundreds of troops attacking Roman Dmitri simultaneously. Safar didn't bother to assist Hannibal, knowing the power of revival. The renowned strong men of Kronos held no importance to him. And then, whack! Roman Dmitri swung his sword, tearing through the rushing dead. Quang. Rumble. An interesting trick. The ability to revive the dead was familiar to him. In the Central Plains, there were those who dealt with the dead, such as Gangsis, but they didn't pose a threat to the demonic sect. They were the ones who died because they were weak. No matter how many of them there were, including the dead, he just had to kill them. Pat. He kicked the ground. He cut down the dead who were rushing towards him and hurried towards Safar. And looking at that scene, Safar gradually gathered his strength. Fury of the heavens. Flash. Rumble. Dark clouds billowed. A cluster of lightning flashed across the sky and rained down, obstructing Roman Dmitri's vision. Quang. Quack quack wang. The entire land was being struck. This was not an attack that a normal human body could withstand, and even Roman Dmitri knew that this mage possessed extraordinary power. The mages were a group that harnessed the energy of nature. The power of disasters being controlled by humans was so intense that the Central Plains couldn't handle it. The mages reached the realm of gods. And in his previous life, Roman Dmitri had surpassed the limits of being human. Heavenly Demon Sword Technique, first part of the second form. There was an illusion. Then his mana raged. The aura rose from the tip of his toes and surged through Roman's sword. Flash. Rumble. Slash. Explosive aura and lightning collided, and the formless lightning was torn apart. This was shocking, even for Safar. He had never heard of a sword being able to cut down on magic. Moreover, 8-circle magic wasn't something humans could even handle. And Roman Dmitri appeared from the lightning. For the first time, Safar showed a look of shock, and he immediately manifested double casting. Flare, blink. Quang. Rumble. He held the powerful firepower in check and moved his body at the same time. However, Safar was unaware of one thing. He didn't know that the flame attribute would be ineffective against Roman Dmitri, nor did he know that Blink's keen senses would be detected. Suddenly, Safar's body materialized 10 meters away. However, as soon as he caught sight of Roman Dmitri emerging through the flame, he realized his mistake. Weak. Whoosh. Flames and lightning surrounded Roman. Meanwhile, the undead creatures raised by revival were unable to match Roman Dmitri's speed. In a situation that would only happen to normal mages, Sefer reacted immediately. Death Hand. Kwang. Kwakwakang. Palms rose from the floor like thorns, pressing down on Roman Dmitri's body. Then Sefer's eyes turned black. He continued to unleash dark magic as he assumed the form of a shadow. Then, with concentrated mana, he pointed his finger. Die. The 8-circle magic spell Fury of the Heavens was compressed. The intense bursts of light transformed into slamming spheres that detonated upon impact. Flash. Space was lost. In the wake of the light's path, devastation reigned. Quack-quack-wang. The air trembled, and the ground tremored. The soldiers of the Kronos Empire, who encircled the area, were left speechless by the unfolding chaos. It was a power surpassing mortal boundaries. Sefer demonstrated the might of an 8-circle mage in Roman Dmitri's presence. In that instant, weak. The wind blew, and Roman emerged from the white light. He took the 6th step. This is the first part of the second form of the heavenly demon sword technique. Kwang. Rumble. Mana raged. Sefer had a hunch that he would die the moment he would get hit by this attack. When he reached the 8-circle level, Sefer felt like he had become God. The strong people that people spoke of weren't even close to his feet, and they were confident that Hannibal was nothing to him. So he was selected to confront Roman Dmitri. He thought that with his 8-circle power, he could annihilate the Western Front and possibly triumph over Roman Dmitri. That was unquestionable. And even as he witnessed Hannibal's demise, Sefer remained indifferent to the situation. Rumble. Magic surged even stronger. Death. For the first time in a century, his mind was plagued with alarms. He opened his eyes and looked at Roman Dmitri. He couldn't comprehend how someone like him, who had barely lived for 30 years, could possess greater strength. What was certain was that he was a natural enemy of mages. The 8-circle magic was diminished, and the power of flames was penetrated. Even blink couldn't deceive Roman Dmitri's sharp eyes. It was a mistaken judgment. To overcome this man, Kronos had to unleash all their strength simultaneously. Because he had attained such great heights, he made the logical decision that Roman Dmitri could be defeated with 8-circle magic. I will perish if this persists. His eyes turned white. Link. His consciousness drifted into the depths of the abyss. I am sorry. I was going to use this against that girl, but I have to use it now. He didn't even wait for permission. With a force that sliced through his body, Sefer unleashed his mana. Congratulations. You are the first to be acknowledged. Kwang. Rumble. There was an explosion of magic, and the space trembled. A black hole-like space was created in the crack of the warped dimension, and a potent surge coursed through, seemingly devouring everything in its vicinity. Even Roman Dmitri found no escape from its pull. Sefer and Roman Dmitri. Thus, the pair were drawn into the abyss of shadows.